Welcome to another episode of Kenny's Kantina, Eating in Style on the Road. I'm enjoying the summer weather up here in the Pacific Northwest. There's so much to see up here, and the scenery is just gorgeous. The mountain was out the other day and looking great. July and August are the best times to come up here. The sun comes out, the rain drops off, but don't tell anyone. It's a secret. Don't want too many people coming up here to enjoy this. When I travel, I like to enjoy the taste of my Tex-Mex roots, and I often dip into my old standbys. Today I'm preparing Carne Guisada, Tex-Mex dish. So let's travel from the Northwest back to South Texas. So Carne Guisada is a tasty Mexican stew. It's a dish of complex flavors that all work together to tantalize your taste buds. It's great on a chilly day, or if your taste buds are just craving a really hearty, nuanced meal. The prep time for this dish is about 15 minutes for all the chopping. Cooking time is an hour and a half. This dish is best slow cooked to make the meat tender, so keep this in mind as you plan your meal. Allow yourself plenty of time. What I'm cooking today will serve 4 to 6 people. You can store it in the refrigerator for up to a week or frozen for up to 6 months. And I always use vacuum seal bags to keep things in my freezer. So the ingredients you're going to need today is half a sweet onion, a poblano pepper, 1 pound of stew meat, or if you have a different steak on hand, you can always cut that up and use that. 3 tablespoons of olive oil, 2 tablespoons of minced garlic, 3 tablespoons of cumin, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of black pepper, 1 teaspoon of oregano, a 14.5-ounce can of fire roasted tomatoes, a 4.5-ounce can of chopped green chilies, about 5 jalapeno slices, and a tablespoon of tomato bouillon. Also today I'm using 1 tablespoon of dry cilantro, and 3 cups of beef stock or beef broth, and finally a half a cup of flour that we'll use for thickening. So moving on to the preparation, first thing I want to do is chop my onions and set that aside. So I'm chopping this onion into about 1/4 inches dices. Okay, you put that to the side. The next thing is to split my poblano pepper so I can remove the seeds. So I'm slicing it right down the middle and cracking it open. Reach my thumb in and pull out the stem along with the seeds. Get most of those out of there. This will help keep from the dish getting too spicy hot. So once that's out, I'm going to chop these in about the same size as the onions. Get that chopped up. Slide that to the side. So my onions and my peppers are done. The next thing is the stew meat. I like to cut the stew meat into bite-sized pieces so you don't have to worry about cutting the meat while it's in the dish. So the stew meat I bought this time was fairly small slices, so it's not taking much to chop it up. Sometimes you'll get really big pieces and you got to chop quite a bit more. So we've got the meat cut, the onions, and the poblanos. Now I'm going to use a deep dish skillet and turn that on and get my olive oil. Put it into my dish, measure it out, get that heated, kind of swirl it around to even it out. And then I'm going to take my meat, slide the meat into the dish. It's starting to sear a little bit. Spread that around. Then I'm going to add my garlic to that. Add my garlic in it. What's nice, I love when that garlic hits that oil and the meat and you can smell that aroma of that coming up. I'm going to let that heat up and sear for a little bit. And I'm going to let that go for about 10 minutes so that browns the meat and in that garlic and get that in. So we'll check in a minute and add back in the next segment. All right, so that meat is simmering in there. It's getting a nice brown color. Now I'm going to add the onion and the pepper to that. So the poblano and the onion go in. And I'm going to stir that together. One of the things that I do with this dish is you'll see I pause between adding each kind of step of the ingredients. And because I'm preparing a dish with lots of complex flavors, this is giving time for each of those flavors to kind of work into the meat. So I'm going to simmer this until the onions become translucent. The poblano peppers will still be a little hard, but that's good. They'll continue to cook down. So I'm going to have this on for about 10 minutes. And we'll let that go. And I'll be back. All right. So we have cooked down the onions to a translucent. It's really smelling good in here. The meat is simmering. It's all brown. And now I'm going to add the next layer, which are my spices. So I'm going to start out with cumin. I'm going to add the cumin to the dish. I'm going to spread that out. Let me add the salt and the pepper. Put that in. And then we're going to switch over and put the oregano. And I have that in. So now I'm going to stir this. And as this is heating up, that cumin really opens up with the heat. And so the cumin, the salt, the pepper, and the oregano are all, those flavors are adding to the layers that we've already put in. So I'm going to let that simmer for about 5 minutes. In the meantime, I'm going to open up a can of diced tomatoes and a can of chopped green chilies. So when this turns to, after about 5 minutes, getting really good, then I'll add those. So now I'm ready to add the diced tomatoes. So I'm going to pour the fire roasted diced tomatoes in there. Going to stir that up a little bit as I do it. Then take my can of green chilies and dump that in there. And now wait and stir it up. Now when you're looking at green chilies in the supermarket, some are marked hot, some are mild, some are medium. I tend to use the mild because I'm not looking for a hot, spicy dish. I want a complex dish with lots of flavors, but I don't want people to be overpowered by heat. Okay, I'm going to let that simmer for a little bit before I add my next layer on top. So it's been about 5 minutes. I'm going to add about 5 slices of jalapenos. Here again, I'm not going for heat. I'm just going for some nuances of flavor. And then I'm going to add in my tomato bouillon on top. That'll just add to that tomato-ness of the dish. And then today I'm using dried cilantro. I didn't have any fresh on hand. You can use fresh, but I'm just throwing some dried cilantro in that. And I'll stir all that together in here again. Then I'm going to let that simmer for about 5 minutes. Let that layer build into the dish. Now that that's been simmering, the next step, I'm going to add in 2 of the 3 cups of beef stock. I'm going to hold off on the other cup because we're going to mix the flour in it later in the recipe. So I'm going to add 2 cups of the beef stock in. I'm going to bring that to a light boil, stir it in real good, and bring it up to a boil. And once it hits that boil, then I'm going to reduce the heat and let it simmer for about 20 minutes. The reason we're letting it simmer for so long is I'm trying to tenderize the meat. You don't want your stew to be chewy or tough to eat, so you want to let that meat simmer for a while. So let's let that simmer, and we'll check back in. Okay, there's a lot of really good aroma coming out. It's nicely simmered. The colors are all blending. You can see the chunks of tomatoes, the peppers. It's smelling really good. The next step we want to do is we're going to want to thicken this up. And to thicken this up, what I'm going to do is put a half cup of flour into that remaining cup of the beef stock. So I'm going to put that into a dish, whisk it around to dissolve up the flour. Try to get most of the clumps out of that. Okay. And then I'm going to take that and add it to it, pour it over, and stir it. And as I'm stirring it, it's lightening up the color a little bit, starting to get a little more thick. And I'm going to simmer this for about 15 minutes, stirring occasionally. And what this will do is that'll give that time for that flour to be able to thicken up the broth that's in there. All right, it's been 15 minutes. It's smelling really good in here. Can't wait to taste it. And I'm going to remove it from the heat, turn off my burner, and I like to let this set for about 15 minutes, some to let the flavors join together more, kind of like when you relax a steak after cooking it. Everything kind of just absorbs when you take it off the heat, and then also make it a little cooler to your mouth. In the meantime, I'm going to grab a bite of this, though, while that's cooling and give it a whirl. So let me take a bite here. Very, very good. There's a little bit of heat in it from the poblano peppers, the green chili, and the jalapenos, but it's not overpowering. It just gives you kind of a nice little feel to it. The texture of it, with adding that thickness from the flour, that adds to it, and you can pick out the tomatoes and the onions, and the meat is really tender. That came out good. You can serve this with rice and beans. That's kind of the traditional Tex-Mex side dishes to do it. You can also heat up some tortillas. You can put it as a filler on a tortilla. It can get a little sloppy because of the juice, but it's very good. First tip is to cook it long enough that you tenderize your meat. It makes it much more pleasant to eat when that meat tends to fall apart. The other neat thing about this dish is, like any stew or chili, it ages well. So leftovers the next day, the flavors just have so much more time to penetrate the food. Even if you freeze it and store it for a while, it'll be great when it comes back out, and it kind of improves with age. Another tip on the cilantro, you can omit that if you want, or you can substitute fresh cilantro for it. And you can also substitute any other steak meat. Depending on what I've had on hand, I've cut up sirloin and used that as well through it. You can keep this dish in the refrigerator for about a week, or you can freeze it for up to 6 months. That way, you can defrost it, enjoy it on your trip down the road. So I hope you enjoy your Carne Guisada. And please, if you have questions, be sure to send me an email. So speaking of questions, there's several questions from episode 4 on my smoked salmon spread that I'll answer a few here. So the first group of questions, Victoria from England, Bill from Colorado, and several others asked about substituting things like smoked walleye, smoked trout, canned salmon, or chicken for the smoked salmon in the recipe. The neat thing about this dip or spread is that all these substitutions will work. The basic ingredients work well with almost any meat or seafood. The taste will change some, but it'll still be good. It'd even be tasty without the smoked salmon as just a cheese dip. So get creative and enjoy. Several viewers, like Patty from Virginia and Marcia from California, mentioned serving the dish at a party. The spread keeps well in the refrigerator, so you can prepare it a few days in advance to save you time on your party day. So that's something that you don't have to work up in. You can also roll it into a ball or on a log to change the presentation of it so that it's not just all scooping out of a dish. And Lynn from Montreal asked about serving it in pastry cups or rye bread as tea sandwiches. I think those are both great ideas, and either one would work. So whichever is easiest for you on doing that, it'd be great. Finally, Romano from Italy asked about freezing the leftovers. On the salmon salad, the main ingredient is the cream cheese. And unfortunately, cream cheese doesn't freeze well. When you defrost it, it'll tend to get crumbly. So you'll lose that spreadability of it. So I would not advise freezing it, and it goes pretty quick anyways. So I want to thank everyone for listening and for all your questions that you've been sending in. Sorry if I didn't get to yours. And also I received several comments from people that have already made and enjoyed the salmon spread. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I really appreciate your questions and comments. They're really helpful to me, and y'all's listening is really important. So please keep listening, share with your friends, and let's enjoy cooking on the road. Thanks again. I enjoy spending the time with y'all. See you soon, and enjoy. Stay tuned for the next episode where I'll be preparing Mexican rice, which is a great side dish to complement the Carne Guisada that we made today. So tune in again for that. Also, I want to thank my sponsors, IBC Productions and Rogue Hog Media Network. Thanks for listening.